On October 9th, 2024, about an hour before I locked up the shop, a white Tacoma rolled into my bay with the check engine light flashing and the whole truck shaking at idle like it was trying to walk out the door on its own. The owner was not panicking. He was resigned. He had already been to another shop that morning, and he handed me a folded estimate and said the words I have heard 1,000 times. They told me it's the coils, probably the plugs too. Almost $700. I started it up, listened for about 10 seconds, then reached in with a 10mm socket and pulled one part off the engine. I moved it about 8 inches to the left, bolted it back down, and cleared the code. 20 minutes later, that Tacoma idled as smooth as the day it left the factory. I did not replace a single coil. I did not order anything. The parts, if it had even needed them, would have run about $15. Today, I'm going to show you the exact trick I used. It's a free diagnostic step that tells you in minutes whether a misfire is a $10 problem or a real one, and why the shops handing you a $700 quote almost never bother to do it first. Here's the thing almost nobody understands about a misfire. When that check engine light comes on and a scanner pulls a code like P0301 or P0304, drivers think the truck just told them what's broken. It didn't. It told you where. P0301 means cylinder 1 is misfiring. P0304 means cylinder 4. P0300 means it cannot even decide and it is bouncing around. But not one of those codes tells you why. The code points at the room. It does not point at the burglar. And that gap, the space between where and why, is exactly where $700 goes to die. Because a misfire just means one cylinder is not burning its fuel properly. And on a modern Toyota, there are at least 4 completely different things that can cause that. It could be the spark plug, it could be the ignition coil sitting on top of that plug, it could be the fuel injector for that cylinder, or it could be something mechanical inside the engine itself. 4 suspects, wildly different costs. The code names none of them. So when a shop reads P0304 and immediately quotes you a full set of coils and a full set of plugs, they are not diagnosing your truck. They are covering every suspect at once and billing you for all of them, because that is faster than actually figuring out which one did it. Let me explain how the ignition system on your truck actually works, because once you see it, the trick becomes obvious. Older engines used a single coil and a distributor that sent spark out to every cylinder through wires. Your Toyota does not work that way. Since the mid-2000s, almost every Tacoma, Tundra, and 4Runner uses what is called coil-on-plug, or COP. That means every single cylinder has its own little ignition coil sitting directly on top of its own spark plug. No wires running across the engine, just one compact coil per cylinder, each one held down by a single 10mm bolt and a plug connector. And that design detail is the whole secret. Because every cylinder has an identical coil, and they are all interchangeable. You can do something a scanner cannot. You can physically move the suspect. This is the trick. When you have a misfire on, say, cylinder 4, you do not guess. You take the coil off cylinder 4, and you swap it with the coil from a cylinder that is running perfectly fine, like cylinder 2. Same part, drops right in. Then you clear the code and you drive it for 5 or 10 minutes. Now, you watch what the code does. If the misfire follows the coil, meaning the code jumps from P0304 to P0302, then the coil is bad. Congratulations, you found your culprit and it is a $30 to $70 part. But if the misfire stays on cylinder 4, if it is still P0304 after you move that coil away, then the coil is innocent. The problem lives in that cylinder, and the next suspect is the spark plug. That is it. That is the whole test. No special tools, no subscription scanner, just a 10mm socket and a basic code reader you can buy for $20 or borrow from any parts store for free. And it answers, with certainty, the one question the shop charged you a diagnostic fee to not answer. On that white Tacoma, the misfire stayed put when I swapped the coil, so I pulled the spark plug. And the moment it came out, I knew exactly what had happened, because I have seen it 100 times. Here is what people do not understand about Toyota's spark plugs. The factory iridium plugs in a modern Tacoma or Tundra are rated to last up to 120,000 miles. That long life is real, and it is genuinely good engineering. But it created a strange side effect. Because the plugs last so long, owners stop thinking about them entirely. They change the oil, they rotate the tires, but a plug that is supposed to go 6 figures just falls off the mental map. And here is the catch nobody mentions. Iridium plugs do not fail dramatically at the end of their life. They drift. The tip slowly erodes. The gap between the electrodes opens up wider and wider, and the coil has to work harder and harder to jump that growing gap. For a long time, it compensates. The truck runs fine. Then one cold morning, on one cylinder, that gap finally gets too wide for a tired coil to bridge cleanly, and you get a misfire. Not because anything broke, because something quietly wore past its limit. And there's a second, sneakier reason these plugs foul out, and this one is pure Toyota truck. On a lot of these engines, especially the 4.0 V6 you find in 4Runners, Tacomas, and older Tundras, the spark plugs sit down inside deep tubes in the cylinder head, and the valve cover gasket seals those tubes. When that gasket gets old and starts to weep, oil seeps down into the plug well and pools right around the plug. Now you've got a spark plug sitting in a little bath of oil, and oil fouls a plug fast. The result is a misfire on one specific cylinder that no amount of new coils will ever fix, because the actual problem is a $5 gasket and a wet plug well. A shop that just throws coils at it will have you back in their bay in a month. The plug, once I cleaned out that well and dropped a fresh one in, never misfired again. So why don't shops do the swap test first? Why is it almost always coils and plugs, all of it, right out of the gate? Be honest about how a repair shop makes money, and the answer is uncomfortable but simple. A coil swap test takes 15 minutes and produces no parts on the invoice. It is, financially, the least profitable thing a technician can do. Meanwhile, a full set of coils plus a full set of plugs, plus a diagnostic fee, plus labor is a clean, easy, several $100 ticket. And the truly frustrating part is that it usually works. If you replace every coil and every plug, you will absolutely fix the misfire, because somewhere in that pile of new parts was the one that was actually bad. So the customer drives away happy, the shop gets paid, and nobody ever finds out that 6 of those 8 parts were perfectly good. The fix wasn't wrong, it was just $500 more than it needed to be. The incentive isn't to find the cheapest answer. The incentive is to find an answer and bill for the safety margin around it. This is not me telling you mechanics are crooks. Most aren't. It's that the entire system is built around replacing parts, and a free reset or a clever swap doesn't fit a business model that runs on parts and labor hours. The person who benefits most from doing the test first is you, the owner. Nobody else in that transaction is rewarded for saving you money. So here is how you take that power back, and it really does fit in 20 minutes on most Toyota trucks. First, get the code read. Parts stores do it for free, or use a cheap reader. Note the exact cylinder. Second, let the engine cool, then pop the engine cover and find the coil on the misfiring cylinder. There is one electrical connector and one 10mm bolt. Pull it and swap it with the coil from a known good cylinder. Third, clear the code, drive it gently for several minutes, and reread. The code either moves or it stays. If it moved, buy one coil, OEM Denso, and you are done for well under $100. If it stayed, pull that plug and look at it. A worn iridium plug will have a rounded, eroded tip. An oil-fouled one will be wet and black. Either way, a single OEM Denso or NGK iridium plug is about $10 to $15 at the counter. One critical detail when you put that new plug in, because it's the most common way people turn a simple job into an expensive one. Do not put anti-seize on Toyota's iridium plugs. The threads come with a special coating from the factory already, and adding anti-seize changes how the plug torques down, which can let it back out, strip the soft aluminum head, or throw off the heat path. Just thread it in clean and torque it to spec. That's it. Now I have to be honest with you, the same way I'm honest with everyone who pulls into my shop, because knowing when this trick won't save you is just as important as knowing when it will. The swap test is a filter. It separates the cheap problems from the real ones. And sometimes it tells you the news you didn't want. If you swap the coil and the misfire stays, and you replace the plug and the misfire still stays, then you've ruled out the two cheap suspects, and now you're into the expensive ones. The next thing I check is the fuel injector for that cylinder, because a clogged or weak injector starves one cylinder of fuel and mimics a misfire perfectly. And past that, you're looking at something mechanical inside the engine, low compression, a burnt valve, worn rings on a high-mileage truck that's been quietly burning oil. That's when a compression or leak-down test earns its keep. Those are real failures, and no reset or swap will touch them. But here's the thing, even then, you haven't lost $1. You've spent 15 minutes and confirmed with certainty that the problem is real before anyone touches your wallet. That clarity is worth more than the test costs, which is nothing. And one more warning, because this is where waiting gets genuinely expensive. If your check engine light is flashing, not just on, but flashing, do not keep driving it like normal. A flashing misfire light means raw, unburned fuel is being dumped straight into your exhaust, and that superheats the catalytic converter. A $10 plug problem, ignored long enough, can melt down a catalytic converter, and on a Toyota truck, that is an easy $1,500 repair. The plug is cheap, right up until the moment you decide to ignore it. So before you authorize a single coil, before you hand over that $700 quote, before you assume the worst about your truck, do the swap. Move the coil. Read the plug. Let the truck tell you which problem you actually have instead of paying a shop to cover all of them at once. 9 times out of 10 on these Toyotas, the answer is sitting right there under a 10mm bolt, and it costs less than lunch. That white Tacoma needed one plug and a clean valve cover gasket down the road. The owner came in braced for $700 and left having spent $15. The look on his face was not really about the money, though. It was the realization that he had almost paid hundreds for the privilege of not being told the truth. If this changed the way you think about a misfire, hit that like button so more Toyota owners see it before they get that quote. Subscribe if you want weekly breakdowns that put the knowledge back in your hands instead of the shop's. And if you've ever beaten a misfire with a swap or a single plug that a shop wanted hundreds for, drop your story in the comments, because the most expensive misfire isn't the one shaking your truck. It's the one shaking your confidence into signing whatever they put in front of you.